I do apologise to the committee. Can we just ignore that last bit? And after clause 71, Amendment 241B, Baroness Fox.
My Lords, I'm rising to speak to Amendment 241B in my name. After the US fintech PayPal deplatforming of UK political campaigns, the Daily Sceptic, the Free Speech Union and Us for Them last September, there was a debate about payment processing and censorship associated with this bill. There was an amendment in the other place that received quite a lot of attention, and it led the Minister, Andrew Griffin, to note that he shared the concerns of the principal issue and potential risks of protecting customers' freedom of expression when it came to payment providers. He assured us that it shouldn't be possible for service providers with significant market position especially to terminate customer relationships based on those customers' views. And I was really delighted when the government confirmed that it will include this issue on the role of payment service providers in delivering services without censorship in its consultation about financial regulations enforced by the FCA. But as I argued at the second reading, I suppose I'm not convinced that this is enough as yet. So, rather unusually for me, I would like more legislative guarantees. The definition in this amendment is deliberately expansive, goes beyond the likes of PayPal, and that's in order to cover banks and payment processors, whether they be card providers like MasterCard, Visa, or companies like PayPal or Stripe. And there are several reasons for this. Firstly, and I suppose this is an important note relating back to discussions that I've sat in and participated in relation to this bill on earlier amendments, the ubiquity of electronic systems in an increasingly cashless society means that being cut off from any source of funds and the emergence as well of the ubiquity of online payment can mean that we have a situation where somebody who is deprived of those services, it would be akin to British Gas refusing services to a household on account of their beliefs, their views, or free speech that they had exhibited, and we wouldn't accept that. Companies can make their own policies and contracts, of course they can, and that would allow them to remove users without explanations. I understand that. But I suppose what I'm trying to explore is whether the law can be used to prevent payment providers from closing accounts on the basis of political beliefs. Because if we don't, then global firms are likely to put their own interests, financial, reputational and political, before any moral duty to act fairly or to act without discrimination. And I don't think we can have global tech firms, online payment services or banks deciding who they can censure or cut off from financial services because of the views that they express. And this is a matter of some concern, not least because, and I suppose this is the other focus that I want you to consider, that at the moment, environmental, social and governance targets, ESG targets, and similarly equality, diversity and inclusion policies, EDI policies, have been embraced so zealously by many companies in the financial services space. And we've seen that from recent controversies around failing banks, that ESG was arguably far more something they were concerned about than maybe whether they were banking well. And so we have a situation in which corporates have taken to moralising about how their customers should behave and think, which I think is a real and present danger. In the US at the moment, the big tech companies that deal in financial services have indeed adopted political positions and are regulating speech of their customers, and that's considered to be a growing problem identified by a wide range of civil liberties organisations that I reeled off and named at the second reading. And sadly, we know from broader cultural trends, for example, in terms of the way that cancel culture at universities started in the US, what happens in the US often should be seen as a warning to us here of what is likely to come. Here in the UK, under current law, ESG has become a vehicle for companies to boldly state their right to block accounts of those whose politics clash with their corporate values. Payment providers such as PayPal, but also high street banks, may terminate the accounts of groups on the basis of lawful speech, as long as they give adequate notice, according to the law. And they can terminate accounts where views it deems unpalatable clash with those values if they include such provisions in their terms of service. Acceptable use policy often proclaims we will take action when we deem that individuals or organisations are involved in promoting hate or intolerance. But I think that such a phrase as hate or intolerance is increasingly seen as and understood to be a rather vague tagline and can be interpreted in a wide range of ways. And I think that this was illustrated last year when Halifax was involved in a controversy after announcing its staff pronoun policy on social media. I don't know if you remember. We were shown a picture of Gemma wearing a she, her, hers staff badge. And the idea was that this was a campaign that would stop any misgendering by the customers of Halifax. There was something of a customer backlash online, which led to Andy, who was the person who seemed to be in charge of the Halifax's online communications at the time, berating critics with the rather shrill, quote, "If you disagree with our values, you're welcome to close your account." As it happens, a lot of people did close their account because they were so outraged at being talked to in that fashion. But telling customers where to go is an unusual policy for growth by any financial service provider. And I think that this was more than an overzealous EDI employee, because on its website, Halifax say any customers they deem to be transphobic could have their accounts closed down. Indeed, underneath the page titled "What We Stand For," they say, quote, "We stand against discrimination and inappropriate behaviour in all forms, whether racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic or ableist," and wait for it, they said that's regardless whether this happens in our branches, offices, over the phone or online or on any of our social media channels. And the actions that they threaten customers with include account closure or contacting the police. Note that HSBC shared the Halifax post and tweeted it out to its 100,001 followers, saying, "We should stand with and support any bank or organisation that joins us in taking this positive step forward for equality and inclusion." Customers, it seems, are the target of political campaigning by financial organisations then, rather than customers being seen as those who need to be given the very best financial services. Because we should also note that in 2022, when that tweet went out, Halifax cut 27 branches across the country. I mean, never mind encountering Halifax staff wearing pronoun branches. The problem is you'd be lucky to encounter a Halifax staff member at all, badgeless or not. And certainly there's very little in the way of physical branches. Now, Matthew Goodwin, the politics professor at Kent University, in a recent report noted that a growing number of companies and corporations are adrift from the wider public by, quote, lecturing them about political issues and being seen to stifle free speech and expression. And Professor Goodwin warns against potential discrimination against consumers and customers in this context, and account holders deemed to hold controversial beliefs. But as one Halifax customer noted, "I don't want to be having conversations about gender when I go to the bank. Frankly, I'd rather they focused on lowering interest rates." Now, of course, we need to respect the right of private companies to choose whom they do business with, as I've said. But this amendment, which is a rather modest amendment, seeks to ensure that they are not free to discriminate because of political, philosophical or religious beliefs within the law any more than banks or online service providers wouldn't be allowed or free to discriminate against people on the basis of the colour of their skin. I do therefore think that we need robust measures in place to protect organisations and individuals from being punished by being cut off by those financial service providers whose EDI or ESG commitments have made them rather cavalier about going far beyond their financial remit. And they should be prevented from acting against people for otherwise legal speech. And remember, we have laws in this country, such as the equality law, and that equality law should not be undermined by the terms and conditions and values designed in Silicon Valley, which in many instances is what we're talking about, and exactly what happened when PayPal punished by removing any financial services from the Free Speech Union and so on. So this amendment, I hope, urges the government not to kick this regulatory duty into the long grass or to suggest that some other piece of legislation is appropriate. And I've put the amendment forward in the spirit that the Minister in the other place spoke about the importance of this issue rather than it being a trivial one. So I hope that the Minister will consider accepting the terms of this amendment into any amended bill that's brought back for reports day.
Insert the new clause as printed on